you up, Dan?
It sneaks it out.
I think it seems like the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm done since today. So then I start with off campus.
Oh yeah. Do you have a Skype students to make
It should be pretty straightforward. We should just be able to keep it up here. But in case there's questions or discussion, you can just kind of pick it up or move it however you want to. You know how this works? Like pin, you twist this to loosen it so it'll go up and down. Got it. Yeah. Okay.
We have a video up.
All right, everyone. If I could have your attention, please. If I could have your attention, please. Today's lunch is brought to you by your student association. So anybody who's on SA, raise your hand in the room. Several of us. Awesome. We want to make ourselves available to all of you. If you have concerns or ideas or ways that we can make our seminary community a more welcoming and vibrant and more connected place, especially for those of you who are maybe on the live stream who are joining us from a distance, we want to try to facilitate that as much as possible. Today we wanted to host a discussion about personal finances in seminary, and most of you, all of you, should have gotten an email about a month ago inviting you to participate in a survey, and we had good responses to that. So this is going to be a few different parts of our discussion today. First of all, I'm going to present the findings of our survey. Then I'm going to hand it over to Lucy Shaker. Lucy is one of the, what's your position title?
Just financial aid associate.
She is a financial aid associate here at the university, and she handles all of the financial aid for seminary students. She's going to present on student loans and how to manage those. And then Karen Palmberg is also here with us from Covenant Trust Company. Hopefully all of you have met with her for your personal finance counseling sessions. Yeah. She's been here this week, and she's going to offer us some additional helpful information. So we will have questions. If you're on the live stream, feel free to comment. Dan is watching that and will bring questions as needed. And so we'll get started here. So the reason that we wanted to The reason that we wanted to put together the survey is to address what we saw as one of the greatest stressors of being in seminary is personal finances. How do you pay for life? How do you pay for tuition? And many people have different creative ways of making that happen, some more fiscally responsible than others. But we are all coping with that stress, right? So we're hoping, we wanted to get a pulse on where our community is at and how we can better address both your felt needs and potentially raise any helpful red flags to help us all be in a better place to be able to minister down the road. So our survey, we had 42 students respond, which was an awesome turnout. Thank you all. We had 25 of those, and not everybody responded to each one of these. That's why the numbers don't add up. 25 of our respondents were full-time students, 15 identified as part-time students, 13 identified as on campus, 11 as distance students, 18 as MDiv students, 7 as MACM and MACF students, and then 3 certificate students. And there's some overlap in those categories. Some of you are doing degrees and certificates at the same time. Let's see here. Family status was another thing that we recognize impacts the dynamics of finances in seminary considerably. This is our breakdown. We had 45% of our group was single, not married, and 31% were married with kids living at home, and 16.7% were married without kids at home. Of those families with children at home, there are 13 families in our seminary community who responded to this. 6 of those have children younger than school age. And when we're thinking about childcare and that sort of thing, that becomes an important distinctive to know. So the survey went through several different areas. I'm going to present some of the highlights of that for you today. Hopefully this is both informative and maybe gives you some ideas. I'm also hoping that this will be a bit of a normalizing discussion to say you don't need to be ashamed of your finances. The other thing that I want to say before we start to get into numbers is oftentimes when we talk about finances, there is a lot of shame associated with that. There are also obviously power dynamics and privilege dynamics that are happening here, and struggles that some in our community don't deal with as greatly as others. So our purpose today is not to increase shame, is not to do that, but rather to hopefully help you get a picture of the challenges that our seminary faces. To be aware, maybe you need more help in a certain area, and you can seek that out as we go along here. So I would encourage you, however this data hits you, to find someone to process through with it, and come to me. I'm the finance and academic liaison for the essay, or to Deb's office would be a great place to walk through if you're really struggling with some of this information in your personal finance realities. So here is, first off, our respondents said their employment status. Most of us are employed part-time, those of us who responded. A few were self-employed, but 55% are part-time employed, 28 full-time employed, and 11.9% are unemployed. So the question was asked, how do you pay for tuition? You could select multiple selections. The primary way was scholarships. Everybody talked about using scholarships, 78%. Employment income for 45% of people goes toward tuition dollars. Student loans, 45%. Support from a local church. If you can utilize the matching grant for that, there's up to $500 a semester can be matched if a local church is making a contribution for your education. It can be your home church, it can be the church you currently serve. 31% of students are hopefully accessing that resource. 19% are spending out of savings. 16% are receiving support from family and friends, and then there were a number of other ways that people are accessing tuition support as well. Same question for living expenses. This is basically everything except tuition. How are you paying for food, rent, et cetera, et cetera. Employment income was the primary one, 88%. Here we saw an increase. More people are relying on friends and family for that help, 33%. Again, a greater percentage of our student body are spending savings to pay for living expenses. And then we have student loans. 16% are using the student loans, the refund that you can receive, to pay for just regular living expenses. There's a discrepancy between later. You'll see there are actually more students doing that than here than reported. But SNAP benefits, food stamps, government aid. That's 11.9% of our respondents are receiving food stamps. And consumer credit, putting stuff on the credit card and not planning to pay it off at the end of the month, 9.5% of our students responded. Support from a local church, and this is typical. I think churches are usually more willing to support your tuition dollars. It's a little bit more concrete of a thing. That was the case in my situation. 7%, and then people are receiving other public aid as well, rent assistance, utilities assistance, that sort of thing, 4.8%. So I'm going to keep on going through here, and if you have questions, we can deal with that. Student loans. On average, what amount of student loans do you take out to pay your bills each semester? And this is total amount of student loans, regardless if the money is used for tuition or anything else. Now, it's interesting here, this one is actually 55% is not on here. This is zero. 55% of our respondents are not taking out any student loans, new student loans each semester. And then you kind of have a spectrum from up to over $7,000 in loans each semester, down to somewhere up in the $500 to $1,000. So we really see a great spectrum of financial situations. On average, how much student loan money do you put toward expenses, all expenses except tuition per month? Here we see a greater percentage, 71% are not using student loan dollars for non-tuition expenses. And then we have a spectrum up to about $2,000, from $100 to $2,000. Here's the big question. How much student loan debt do you expect to have when you graduate? And we narrowed it down to individual and family to get an idea of that. 38% of our respondents said they expect to have no student loan debt after seminary, which is really great, really encouraging. Maybe not so encouraging if you're in the other sections of this pie, but it is a good sign that it is for some people in our community this is doable. And then it's kind of evenly distributed from as low as $1,000, 14% here, all the way up to greater than $1,000. That's combined. Say thank you. $100,000. Yes. $100,000. Thank you. It is a lot of zeros. And that's for combination of undergrad and graduate.
That's what I was just gonna add.
Yep. So that's together. And Lucy's going to have some more solid numbers on this, I think, than I have. Same question for how much student loan debt does your whole family expect? See a big uptick in the over $100,000 range here from, I don't know what that percentage is, but it almost doubles. And a decrease in the amount that will have less, but again, that will have no student loan debt at the end of education. Credit cards. This was a question we wanted to ask just to see how people are using consumer credit. How much consumer debt do you add each month to pay for non-tuition expenses? Do not include any amount you pay off at the end of the month. The vast majority, close to 70%, are zero. But we do have a spectrum here between kind of 100, 500, all the way up to, that's the $2,000 already, I believe. Adding new consumer debt each month to pay for expenses. And we can talk more about that. Here's another question that I think is helpful. When we think about our readiness to serve in ministry and the things that are going to be a constraint on our ability to take a call to certain churches, student loan debt, but especially consumer credit that has higher percentage interest rates. This is close to 70%, 66% say no credit card debt upon graduation. But we do have a spectrum here from $1 on up to close to $20,000 of consumer credit, which is certainly, when we get to talking about stressors, certainly a great stressor to carry that amount of debt. Giving. Now here's something a little more positive. 100% of our respondents said that they give some amount to a church or charitable organization every month. So good job. Good job. That's great news. We may be in debt, but we are still generous, and that is a good thing. Again, you see a spectrum of perspectives here. And then savings is the same, whether it's retirement, long or short-term goals. We see here again, the largest portion, 38%, are not saving any amount per month, and then we have up to above $500 in savings for each month. And remember that our seminary community is a pretty diverse group of people. We have some people who are registered for just 1 or 2 classes a semester, who are working full-time jobs and living quote-unquote a normal existence other than coming to campus for a class or 2 every year. And then we also have people who are here full-time, unemployed, a small number, but that are here as full-time students, unemployed. So you have this huge spectrum that is underlying some of these numbers and dynamics that we're seeing here. Our hope is to help everybody along that spectrum to find ways to practice healthy financial practices. So this was maybe the most helpful part of the data for me, I think, was to see free responses. And I've categorized to 2 questions. People were asked, what are your greatest financial stressors? And then second, what are the things that you think the seminary community could help you in greater ways? Student loans and repayment, even though, the statistics for how many students take out student loans, that about 45% of the group does not take out any student loans to pay for school. But of the portion of students that do, that's the greatest and most frequently named stressor. How am I going to repay these loans, especially if I'm going to be in a church setting, maybe not making the big bucks. Credit card and debt management also ranked up there. And then kind of expenses and on down, tuition, food, not enough time to try to balance work and school, seminary community involvement, and to be fiscally responsible. How to save in this kind of a season. 3 people said that. Medical bills are an issue for many people, or for at least 2 people, but a big issue for those who mentioned it. Rent assistance would be helpful. Income decreases, whether that's something we're experiencing now or anticipating, is a stressor, along with the difficulty of finding health insurance, investments. 2 people said they have no financial stress. Great, that's good news. Maybe if you're in this room, maybe you can let us know how you do that.
Denial.
That was not me, I can tell you that. How to pay taxes, I'm not sure whether that was preparation or figuring out how to pay them, but, and then finally, car issues and that sort of thing. Here's what was asked of seminary, and I've categorized them into personal finance stuff. A lot of people mentioned I need instruction on student loan management repayment, which Lucy's going to address as soon as I'm done here. We talked about personal budgeting. You should all be meeting with Karen once a semester. That is a great place to start to explore that if you don't know where to start. Financial Peace University has been offered in the past by PIM, Partners in Ministry. That's something that we could certainly consider doing again if there's interest in that. It would address the budgeting stuff as well. Investing guidance, how do we invest? Again, that's an area I would encourage you to talk to Karen about, but we can explore other options. Time management, work and school, personal tax advice, and clergy tax advice. Come next week for clergy tax advice. It is convoluted and complicated, and Michelle Harbeck-Haley from the ECC offices will be here to help us sort that out. I've heard that spiel like 2 or 3 times, and I still want to come because it's always like, well, does this count or not? So there's a lot of little details. I would encourage you to be here next week at noon. It will also be live streamed. Church financial management. I'm not sure if you all are aware, there is a course that the School of Business offers that's in the church management certificate. Somebody in this room, I'm sure, could speak to that better than I can. But this is specifically on church finance and budgeting, right?
Church administration, yes. We do take a couple financial management courses as part of the certificate.
Yeah, great. So if you're interested in shoring up that part of your finances, I'd encourage you to talk to Alex or somebody or Alex or Luke or somebody in the academic office. Broader scholarship options for immigrant students. Aware that some who, in the midst of this week especially, some who have the deferred action for childhood arrivals are not eligible to receive, maybe not scholarships, but federal loans. That was a typo on my part. Greater transparency about seminary fees and tuitions. Why do dual degree students have to pay more for credit? That's a question that was raised. That could be addressed here if someone really feels the desire to do so. And then the last one, normalizing public assistance. And this is something that I just wanted to speak to personally. Based on the different levels of income that were reported on this survey, many of us in the seminary community are eligible for different forms of public aid. Whether that's Medicaid for health insurance, or food stamps, SNAP benefits, or even, especially for those who are perhaps unemployed while in school, maybe even rent assistance and that sort of thing. Let me just say candidly, my family and I are on SNAP benefits. We receive food stamps. It's a great program. It's a hard system to navigate. The application process can take several months, but they pay retroactively back to the time that you applied. This is a good time to access all the resources that are available to us. And I know sometimes there's a stigma around that, But I would encourage you to explore, if you Google Illinois SNAP calculator or something like that, an eligibility calculator will come up. You can punch in your numbers and see if you're eligible for assistance in that area. And if you're thinking about going that route, please talk to me. I've navigated the Department of Human Services, figuring out the right times to get there for the lines and all of that. So I'd be glad to help you walk through that. Yeah, and now we're going to shift gears to Lucy Shaker. We will have an open Q&A down there.
Just the hand.
Yeah.
I'll wait a second for anyone filling up. Well, thank you, Eric, for organizing this. I think what I want to leave you with today is the sense that you can always find help in the financial aid office here at North Park. So I'm going to give you a brief overview, and many of you will have more questions, more specific questions to your situation, and I would encourage you to come and visit us. Student Academic Service Building. Just come and we'll be glad to talk to you about your individual situation and about your individual options that are available. And one of the reasons is that in any presentation it's hard to generalize, especially the seminary. Just from Eric's talk you can realize some of you have families, some of you have a lot of support, some of you are paying for this with student loans. So it's and when we give you a financial aid award, we put in a small amount of student loan because we don't know your specific situation. You can come and see us and we can talk to you about your needs or give you additional loan money. We always, in our office, encourage students to be responsible borrowers, to take the least amount of loan that works for your situation. But then, let's fast forward that you're graduating. What happens then with your student loans? There are things that you as a consumer will need to know. You'll need to know about your type of loan, your interest rate on the loans that you've taken, the total amount owed, whom to repay, all of these basic questions. When your repayment begins, what your repayment options are. And there is a source that you can link to anytime right on your web advisor. This nslds.ed.gov, it tells you exactly all the loans you've taken, not your private loans, but if you have taken Stafford loans or Perkins loan as an undergraduate or a graduate, that will give you all of your information. You will need your FSA ID, which was new last year. So if you haven't completed a FAFSA this year, or if you haven't checked your loan, when you get to nslds.ed.gov, they will talk you through getting an FSA ID if you haven't received one yet. It'll take you to a screen, looks something like this. Your financial aid review will take you right to your loans, right to your loan history. One of the things that they'll list, when you borrowed a Stafford loan, the funds came from the U.S. Department of Ed. But you do not repay them, you repay a loan servicer. The government spreads out between currently there are 8 loan servicers. So when you see your loan at that NSLDS site, it will tell you who your servicer is. That is going to be your best friend. That is the place you should contact about any questions about the amount of loan, repayment, anything like that. That is the person you're going to be dealing with. This is just a sample that we suggest that when you go on NSLDS so that you know what you owe. This is just an example optional chart that will give you in one space an easy to follow resource for your loan history. And when does your repayment start? As a graduate student, you always have a 6-month grace period. You don't have to pay your loans back right away until 6 months after you graduate, unless you've already used up your 6-month grace period, which is very possible for a graduate student. You might have used it up going from undergrad to grad, where you had 6 months. Then you get a once in a lifetime 6-month grace period before you have to start repaying. More yes. How do I repay the loans? Well, now you know your loans. You have to evaluate your own financial situation. So you're not just spending all of your money repaying your loans. You might have housing. You might have a parent that you have to assist. You might have children that you are paying for their tuition somewhere. So there are lots of options. You have to know what you really have that you're able to afford to spend to repay your loan. Now the best source, this www.studentloans.gov, it's your best source. It is the source that gives you neutral advice. There's no one taking any money, there's no one making any money on the advice they give you. This place will show you, comes up, it looks something like this. It continually changes. But you'll see on studentloans.gov, and if you've ever done an entrance interview for your loan, you've been to this site. It might have looked a little different, but it is basically this. You'll see managing repayment. All the information you need is right there. It'll take you to the different options you have for repaying your loan. It will take you to the options that you have if there have been unforeseen circumstances that prevent you from making a monthly payment. It's interactive, so you're able to get the information and follow up right at that website. The federal loans, the Stafford loans, and the Perkins loan. As a graduate student, you have not had a Perkins loan here at North Park. You might have had it as an undergrad, so that also appears in your information on your total loans. There used to be one way to repay your loans. 10 years, 120 payments, they divided it up. And after 10 years, you were finished, you have paid it off. They added several tweaks to that system where it could start at a lower amount and then would increase to a higher amount. Theoretically, as you earn more money, you'd have more to spend on your loans. But minor tweaks. In the last couple of years, they've introduced some income-driven repayment plans where they look at the amount of money that you make and what you can afford to repay. So those options are also available. You'll see if you go to studentloans.gov, you'll see the whole chart. You put in the amount you owe, you put in the interest on it, and they will work out a chart for you where you can see what your options are. Couple things you have to know. When repayment begins, you have to make, or you have to contact your servicer to discuss other options. But the worst thing that can happen to you is not making a payment on your loan, because that follows you later on when you're trying to get a mortgage. It can follow you when you are applying for a job. It is the big no-no. And you don't miss a month without making arrangements with your servicer. You have to pay it every month. And you'll see this chart gives you more information on the newer types of income payment. The pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, income contingent. Essentially, they look at the poverty level for a family at a certain size. They multiply that by 1.5 times. Subtract it from your salary. Let's say you make $40,000, and the poverty level is 1.5. For a family of 3, might be $30,000. $10,000. So the amount that you would have to pay comes off the difference there. It would be a $10,000 amount. And that's the amount that you need, that they will look at as far as discretionary income. So I have a handout that we have for you that will summarize this. This is a lot of material to see. So when you pick your plan, understand your options, estimate your budget, define your goals. Is your goal to pay off this loan as quickly as possible, or is your goal to pay off the loan but also to make sure that your family has everything that, there are many different things for you to think of. This is a chart of the initial payment for a student loan that's at $100,000, so just for the purposes. I ran a list of all the students in the seminary who are taking loans. The current average of the student taking loan at the North Park Seminary is $60,000. So that is.
Is that accrued loan or is that per year?
That's accrued. No, that's accrued. The average student here who's currently taking loans has between undergrad and grad $60,000 in loans. So here is just a chart that shows you your first payment if you were repaying a loan, the standard amount, the graduated, extended fixed, extended graduate. These are the older fashioned type of loan repayments. These are the new one, pay as you earn, and the income-based repayment, income contingent repayment. These two, just the difference is the amount of years you have to repay it. One thing, I don't know if you can all see this chart, but it gives all the different types of repayments, shows you the total interest paid on $100,000, that you could be paying $33,000 in interest. When you look at these numbers, they're sometimes a little scary. But for these three, pay as you earn, income-based repayment, and income contingent, it said projected loan forgiveness. That is something that's also relatively new in the loan repayment field. But even if those loans, there's still an amount paid of $84,000 here, $142,000. There still is a significant amount paid over 10 years. So it's not as if you don't have to pay anything on those loans you've taken. You do have to. And the scary part of these three loans is you have to pay every month. If you miss a payment for any reason, you no longer can participate in that program. So there are things to consider before you make a decision to do any one of those programs, but it's certainly worth looking into. Just so you know, the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program, direct loans only. You have to work full-time, which they consider 30 hours or more, as a paid employee for an eligible public service organization for 10 years. Repaying loans in either pay-as-you-earn or income-based repayment. This is the site where you can look at. Also at studentloans.gov, so that you know currently working in a church is not considered eligible for this program. So,
A Christian-based nonprofit could be.
yes.
Hospital.
Yes. University. There are a number of things. That's why you can check out what is considered. But just a straight church employment would not be considered. So this is just basically what I said before, where to go for additional information. And just remember, we love seeing you. You're welcome to come and visit us in the financial aid offices. Thank you.
One question.
Yes.
What happens to your loan after you die?
It goes to your state.
We're going to transition to Karen, and she's going to offer some best practices for us, financial practices should be applicable to all of us. And then if we have a couple minutes after that, we'll do Q&A.
I'm Karen Palmberg. I work for Covenant Trust Company. I'm a financial service rep. I also do some financial planning and coaching, and that's what I do here for the seminary. I kind of am a little bit unique because I was a SEM spouse. I was a pastor's wife for 18 years. I've kind of lived your life, so I understand what that was just doing. And yeah. And so when you come and talk to me, and please take advantage of that. If you were to go and see a financial planner, you would be paying money to do this. And this is a gift to you. And so I want you to come and talk to me. There is no guilt, there is no shame, there's no judgment on this. This is just what it is, and let me help you plan. Because if you're not going to plan, you can see where things can really go wacko and sideways on you. So I just wanted to, they asked if I'd say a little bit about best practices. Those of you that I have met with this week, and there are about 30 of you, a lot of it has to do with credit cards. And I have to say, I've really been pleased that some of the things that we put into place over the last year and a half that I've been doing this, I have seen people reduce their credit card debt. And I had one that got rid of 7 credit cards. They put it on a 0% interest. They paid it off. They are now able to start looking at what's that going to look like now to put that extra money right now into our budget and savings, but also on a student debt, or we're not going to have to take out as much in loans. So if you don't have to use a credit card, please don't do that. And if you like store cards, they're the bane of everybody's existence because they're at 26.99%. If you bought something on sale, you did not get it on sale if you didn't pay it off that month. So be very careful. One of the things that helps people is to paying it off is a snowball effect. That's where you need to see something happen. So maybe you've got 3 or 4 credit cards. Take the one that's got the least amount of money on it. Pay the minimum on the others, but put extra on that so that all of a sudden you're getting that satisfaction. One card's gone. That's gone. Now you can put that extra money on the next one. That's just called the snowball effect, and it really feels good. Another one, though, is if you take a look at the interest rate. If you have a really high interest rate card, you might want to put the most on that and really get that down so you're not getting hurt with that interest. But that's just being a really good steward and getting rid of those credit cards. And it's leaving a comfort zone. It's really easy to swipe or now with that stupid chip. And when it doesn't work, take that as a sign from God. But you know, it's very freeing to be out from under credit card debt. So the more that you can do that, the better. This is amazing what Lucy showed you on the student loans, and that has been a huge part of our conversations. And so as we're planning together, we can plan for some of these things. We can also plan what we don't have to take. One of the things that I know people have struggled with is that they've taken out money to help pay for their rent or their living expenses. But if they didn't pay it right away when they got it, it got used up. That's just how family budgets go. So if you can pay for your quarter when you get your loan, pay it, and then it's taken care of. That's just a really easy thing to do. An eye-opening experience that I had a young couple that I was working with, not in the seminary. They had a 3rd grader, and so it's just the 3 of them. They told me they did not have $50 a month to put into savings. I said, well, let's just take a look at where your money's going. And I handed them a brown paper lunch bag, and I said, I want only fast food or Starbucks in this bag for the month. It was $1,200. Yeah. They had no idea because it was just oh, we're going to drive through. Oh, we're going to stop. Oh, well, we've been working all day, let's stop. There was not one restaurant receipt in there. Seriously, with Starbucks, yeah. So that was a major eye-opener. So my question to you is, try for 2 weeks. Just put aside receipts. Where's your money going? Is it just something that's an impulse buy? If you say, you know what, let's just go out and have McDonald's or whatever. Instead, decide what you would have paid, put it in a jar, see how much that grows in 2 weeks. All these visual things just seem to make it easier for families to see where their money's really going and what's happening with that. But I also want you to have some funny money. So you really need to, each of you, have a little bit of funny money that you don't have to count to anybody, not even your spouse. It's your money. You don't mess with theirs. They don't mess with yours. You have to have that. It's kind of like going on a diet and not eating any chocolate. When you get around chocolate, it'll not go well. Another thing that I really am trying to help people plan is talking about some of the retirement things. I know it seems like a long ways away, but I literally am on a snowball and I hit it really fast. So, you know, there are things that the church will be able to do for you, there are things that they won't. Let Covenant Trust help you get some retirement things put into place. And if you're doing it now, just a little bit every month, you know, you're going to be in great shape because you might have a pension and you might have Social Security, but you will have this retirement retirement that you have been contributing to. And it just really helps you be able to work together as couples doing some of that. And so please, take advantage of what the seminary has done, what the Lilly Grant has done in gifting you somebody to talk to, somebody that gets it, and somebody that really wants to help you walk this journey and make those plans. So I will be back in the spring again. We're looking at the calendar now. It'll be March or April sometime. And I also work with long distance. You have my email, you have my phone number. You're welcome to call me, and I'm happy to talk things through with you. So thanks.
We do have a couple minutes here. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Emily.
What is the government's minimum requirement amount of credits you have to have in order to stay in deferment? Is it 4?
If you are in the seminary, it is 4. Then you are considered a half-time student.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. That was, how many credits do you have to stay in deferment on student loans? 4 credits. Any other questions? Yeah.
In terms of why is the dual degree credit hour more, it's simply the difference between the business schools credit hour and the seminaries. And they discount it. It's less than you would pay as if you just took a business school degree, but it's more than you would pay just for seminary credit hours. It's the best deal we could cut between the two schools.
That's helpful. Thank you, Dave.
Can I just say, when I answered your question, it was 4 credit hours. But let's say you've graduated, you've finished the program, and you decide to just come back and take an individual course. That would not count. You have to be a degree or certificate seeking student. So, just as an aside.
I have a question. One thing I noticed was I was going through survey results. So there are some people who are putting living expenses on credit cards, but not taking out any student loans. Could either of you speak to that? What would be best practice in that sort of a situation?
Well, the current interest rate for this year, and it changes each year, the current interest rate for a unsubsidized Stafford loan is 5.31%. So when you compare that to what you might be paying on a credit card, I would definitely encourage you to take the student loan route.
Yeah. Definitely. Or better yet, try to crunch those expenses. But like we all have needs, obviously, right? And so, yeah. But think about that too. Think about carefully. I know for myself, there's a tendency like, oh my gosh, well, I can't afford anything, so whatever. I'm just gonna let this go. But that's when you really get yourself into dangerous territory. Right now, the debt that we are compiling in seminary is not going to just leave, as we heard today. And so think about those things carefully and what your best practices could be. I mean, even like perhaps talking to a family member, like say, you know, I'm coming up X number of dollars short a month. If there's somebody who has the means to lend you that, interest-free, it's a much better way to go, and it's going to feel like less of a burden, hopefully, than credit card debt. Any other questions? I have a few of my own, like as I was going through things and thinking about my practices and looking at ways that people, these are some creative options. For tuition, work at North Park. If you are a North Park employee, full-time, work full-time at North Park. Perfect, that's easy. But there is an employee discount for full-time employees. Another thing I noticed, there are some seminary students whose jobs are paying for part of their tuition. I even had a part-time ministry job once that said, like, we'll give you $1,500 a year toward tuition. It's a small amount, but it helps. It helps a lot. So think about maybe that as a creative way to address tuition. One thing that Karen has mentioned to me is for general finances, maybe you need to take a semester off. If bills are just compiling and you feel like you're just getting further and further behind, can you take a semester off, or maybe a semester down to so your loans can stay in deferment? It's down to just 4 credits. If you have a job that would allow you to work a little bit more, maybe set a little bit aside in short-term savings, that'll take some pressure off. If you're looking at a semester or 2 more, maybe it's worth it for your whole program. Understand how to use loans and credit wisely. That's what we were talking about. What's going to cost you more in the long run. Creative budgeting. Find creative ways to save money. And I don't have it here, but for us as a family, we were trying to figure out childcare. It's super expensive. What we discovered was we had some friends who had a kid who was around the same age. And so we swapped childcare. They watched our kid 1 day a week. We watched theirs 1 day a week. And that gave us a little bit more margin as a family to be able to do that better. Other things. Oh, shoot, I had a list. Any creative budgeting ideas that you all have explored?
Eat at home.
Eat at home. Yes, that's good. Eating at home is a lot cheaper. Make big meals on the weekends. If you're finding like during the week, oh, I don't have time to make dinner, I'm going to go to McDonald's. Like make something big on the weekends, stick it in the fridge or the freezer. Another thing, eat less meat. It's a whole lot cheaper to eat vegetarian. You don't have to go vegetarian entirely, but if you cut your meals, meat meals in half a week, you're going to notice a difference. Yeah, Deborah.
Save your change at the end of the month.
That's
Put that in your savings.
That's right.
That's good. Save your pocket change, put that into your savings at the end of the month. Emily.
After all of my expenses are done for the month, like everything that would, out of my paycheck that would require payments, I have a certain amount of money for like spending or excess money, and I take that out in cash. And then once it's gone, it's gone. So
Yeah.
I try to rarely use my debit card.
That's good. For extra expenses that you're not are not part of your fixed expenses, take the cash out. It's like an envelope budgeting system, very similar. And then once that cash is gone, you can't overspend discretionary stuff. Any other thoughts?
I think we also, last year, Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University was offered through the SA and FIM. We still have a few of those packs available. So if that is something that you are interested in, come and talk to me and we can get that to you. That was great for my husband and I because we were on totally different pages on how we even thought about money. So that was a really great resource. So.
Yeah, and we could get a little of the grant money that we still have for the year, and if anybody wants one beyond what we have left over, we could purchase a few more. And if you don't have a good bookkeeping, software, QuickBooks books or whatever, we could make a contribution towards that as well.
That's great.
I'll set that up with Luke, and you can just ask him directly.
Awesome. Any other thoughts? The last things on my list are here just to access the resources that are available with humility. If there's government assistance you're eligible for, apply. If there's local food banks, if food is a tough thing, maybe you can take a box from the food bank every month. I've had people at the food bank tell, yeah, we have students who come and do that. It's totally fine. Deb's office has a Deacons Fund that's specifically for emergencies. If you find yourself or your family in an emergency situation, she can help you out with a small amount of assistance for that as well. And in general, I just encourage you all to talk to each other. What I've found is there's kind of a taboo on this, but when I bring it up to somebody who I can trust and we have a conversation, there's more ideas out there that I haven't thought of, and we're all the better for it. So hopefully this is the beginning of the conversation for you and for all of us, and we can continue that moving forward. So thanks for your time. Have a great day.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.